Notre Dame running back Jeremiyah Love is already drawing attention as the top returning running back in college football. A preseason All-American by Sporting News, Love has a chance to lead the Fighting Irish to another college football playoff run, along with the potential to produce a Heisman Trophy campaign in 2025. But what makes Love such a special running back, and what is his upside as an NFL prospect? Will he be viewed as a top-tier prospect at the position compared to players like Ashton Jeanty and Bijan Robinson in recent years? Let's dive into the stats and the tape to get a better look at Notre Dame's superstar in this week's college football episode. This is Best Available. The hype around Love has really been there since high school. A consensus 4-star recruit by all the major recruiting outlets like On3, 24/7 Sports, and Rivals. Love was the Missouri Gatorade Player of the Year and an Under Armour All-American in 2023. On top of a state championship in football, Love was also a state champion in track, running a 100-meter dash in just 10.76 seconds. Love's offers unsurprisingly included blue blood programs like Alabama, Georgia, Michigan, Oregon, Penn State, basically any top program you can think of, but ultimately he decided to go to South Bend to play for the Fighting Irish. That decision so far has paid off for Love. After seeing limited action in 2023, Love burst onto the scene in 2024. Despite carrying the ball just 163 times, he ran for 1,125 yards and 17 rushing touchdowns, averaging a terrific 6.9 yards per carry. And some of his biggest highlights came on the national stage in the college football playoff. You're probably more than aware, lack of true volume had him not earning the national accolades that you might expect simply because his workload was a bit smaller than some other running backs like an Ashton Jeanty or a Caleb Johnson out of Iowa. Still, his 6.9 yards per attempt were tied with Heisman finalist Ashton Jeanty near the top of college football. Despite his perception as a home run hitter, he was 15th in the nation with 4.39 yards after contact per carry. And per PFF's elusiveness rating, he was third in the nation behind only Jeanty and UNLV's Kylan James. However, if you're going to talk to any coach, you'll know that the most important stat on his stat sheet for Love is 0, and that is 0 fumbles on 234 career carries. The stats are impressive despite a relatively small workload. Love ranked in the top 70 in rushing attempts in college football. But with, increased workload and a team that's still looking for another college football playoff run, everything's there for Love to have a true breakout season in 2025. And it's one of the big reasons why he's considered clearly the top running back in college football heading into this season. However, you're probably still wondering what makes Love truly special if you've only watched him in passing. So let's dive into the film. I want to start with the play from the college football playoff against Penn State because I really think the context of it matters, and I think it's everything that NFL and college coaches just love about this kid. And then let's go and rewind to week 1 or the season opener for Notre Dame against the Texas A&M Aggies. Why? A, because Love was hurt and dealing with a knee injury for the majority of the postseason, and I just wanted to get a look at him when he is fully healthy. And B, Texas A&M's defensive front was absolutely loaded last season with Shamar Stewart, Shamar Turner, Nick Scorton, just a lot of NFL players on that defensive front. I think it's a great way to get some good-on-good tape of Love. So let's go ahead and dive into the film. All right, before we dive into the A&M film, I absolutely had to show this play in the college football playoff against Penn State. If you recall or don't remember, Jeremiyah Love at the tail end of the season was nursing a knee injury and was wearing a knee brace on his right knee the entire playoff run, if I recall. But regardless, in this game, it was clearly hampering him, and he was still going out there and just giving it his all. And for a player at the running back position, I don't think it gets talked enough how important toughness is, both physical and mental. And I don't think a play embodies that from a running back better from last season than Jeremiyah Love on this run. Again, remember, this is the college football playoff, and he is nursing a knee injury, and they are trying to limit his usage. And it does not seem like Love cares on this play. He gets the ball. I don't know how he stays up there. He's fighting through another DB. He's fighting through more tackle attempts, and then he stretches out at the goal line. It's just such a... I can't put into words how impressed I am with the effort here. All right, let's get into the A&M tape as well. And just for the record, it felt like it took a bit for Love to get going. We talked about his limited utilization. Wasn't used a whole lot in this game until later on. And then once he started becoming a more focal point as far as touches, he started really turning on the Jets and really impressing. So, this first play is just an example of that track speed. We talked earlier in the video, this is a legit successful high school track star. And I think that speed shows up on display that when he sees an angle or a hole and he can turn on the Jets, defenders can't take the right angle to catch up with him. So let's just go ahead and start rolling it. We can see as he's getting the ball, he has a very clear rushing lane just right there. That's going to be, a potentially solid run. But for Love, this turns into an even bigger one. Nice crackdown block by the receiver, and just the DB has no chance of catching up to Love here. And roll it again. Again, the edge probably gets a little too deep trying to go over that block. A nice crackdown, and then Love's just off to the races. Just like he's an explosive play waiting to happen. Again, even on these limited touches last season, he made the most of him and just consistently produced these big chunk plays. We've hammered the track speed a lot in this video already, but I also think what makes Love the top running back in college football is his combination of balance and agility, and just how he makes guys miss in a phone booth while staying upright. He is uncanny in the way that he's able to find these small creases for a pretty tall, lean running back and continue to produce positive yards. So we can just start rolling this one. This is just an inside zone. He has a pretty clear, you want to make sure this block's engaged and bounce it. But things get messy, right? You have number 5 here that's, trying to make a play. You got to avoid him. And things just kind of get messy real quick. We're not expecting this defender to crash down to this lane. It's honestly a great effort by whoever this defender is. So Love has to stay patient and then make a sidestep. And then what I like at the end of this run is instead of making that guy miss and just falling down, he's still picking up another 2-3 yards by still driving his feet through contact from a neutral position where he doesn't really have any forward momentum. So we'll show it to you in full again. It's just the combination of vision, elusiveness, keeping the feet moving from neutral. Like, just things aren't always going to be pretty as a running back, but the way that he's able to almost slow things down in all of the chaos is what makes him so successful. Just a very impressive run, even if it's not, a 25-yarder or a touchdown. As the game got even later, I thought Love took an even bigger step forward as far as turning on the gas. And I think he's a big, big reason why Notre Dame was able to pull out this win. Just started showing off all these different versatile types of skill sets, whether it was the breaking away or the elusiveness. And here's another good example of that. So as we turn it on, it's just the subtle movements he's able to use to create separation and keep this play going. His ability to start and stop and catch defenders flat-footed is just such a rare trait you don't see a lot, except in the truly superstar running back. So right here we see, where are his eyes? He's probably thinking here, right? But in order to set this up, you need to make sure that this defender stays on this shoulder of the tackle. So he gets there, and then he's thinking, this hole, it's this tackle's legs are in the way. So you're going to need to break away here. So we're going to see some of that explosiveness to separate. And then right here is what I love. He's one-on-one with a defender, and his ability to stop his motion to catch this guy flat-footed and then take off again. It's a very subtle move, but one that makes this an explosive play. Just that ability to change direction so quickly, and we will rewind it so you can see the whole thing. I'll just play it in full this entire time, but you can just see these little moves and his processing in real time on how to just find ways to maximize every carry, especially in open space, especially when he sees rushing lanes developing and has that backup plan when they fall through. You do not, I'm telling you, you do not see running backs with that kind of vision and patience, especially when they're track stars like Love is. You'll hear the phrase getting skinny through a hole a lot, and that's just a phrase of talking about when a gap seems almost like it's not there, and a running back somehow able to squeeze through without tripping over. And maybe I overvalue this trait a lot as a former fullback, that I still remember a play where I thought I had a wide open rushing lane and tripped on an offensive lineman's foot because I'm a bigger boy. I can't get skinny. But I think this is a great example of that phrase, and then showing off more explosiveness from Love, you can see how small this hole is. You have to get around a lot of feet in here. And then you have, a linebacker closing. There's just not a lot of space. But Love's ability to get there and then just take off for what looks like an easy touchdown. But in a gap scheme like this is easier said than done. You're going to see multiple pullers going through here. So there's just a lot of congestion on a play like this. Um, but his ability to, again, get skinny and then just turn on the afterburners from such an awkward position. Like, there are a lot of guys that can get 0 to 100, but there's not a lot of guys that can get 0 to 100 from awkward angles. And just Love's ability to do that and catch guys flat-footed is just so damn impressive. All right, this is near the end of the game. This is basically Notre Dame just trying to burn clock, right? So we need first downs, and we're going to keep running the ball. So A&M knows a run's coming. Both sides know what's trying to happen, and Love's trying to do everything he can to make sure that they can get positive yards and work their way towards those first downs. Just look how slippery this guy is. The amount of guys trying to bring him down, and he's still staying up and still staying up and still staying up. I run out of words sometimes for it. We can run it through again because it's just, is it a huge gain? No, but like, how does he stay up through? Look at how many defenders are around him, and it's almost like he's by himself and keeps finding ways to make guys miss, keep his feet moving. I just love at the end of that play, there's a guy on his ankle, and all he's thinking about is keeping his legs moving and churning to pick up whatever he can get. And I think it goes back to the beginning of this video talking about that toughness. Like, this is a guy that does not want to go down, and he needs to do whatever it takes to either score the touchdown, get the first down, do whatever his team needs of him. And that's like what every coach dreams of in a running back. We'll talk about some areas of improvement too here. I don't want this to be an entire, just he's the greatest thing on earth. I don't ever want to do that in videos, but we also want to focus on a lot of the positives, right? So let's just talk about some areas of improvement. And I think one of them is there are times where Love's almost thinking too much instead of taking what's given from him. I'm not saying that's a unique thing. I think that's extremely common, especially in younger running backs. I mean, when you're an All-American in high school and a Gatorade Player of the Year in your state, you're used to being Superman, right? But there's times where you don't have to. And this is just a simple duo concept. So what we mean by that is just a pair of double teams. Ideally, one of these guys can eventually peel off and get to the second level. But this should be pretty straightforward, right? Like, it's a duo. On a duo, we're just trying to take whatever we can get and go. So what we see here instead is the hole starts closing up. Love's not trying to get what he's getting. He's thinking about bouncing outside. He changes his mind. It's a little ugly. We can roll that again because you can see the hole developing on the duo. But again, by hesitating outside and thinking of bouncing it, it allows that blitzer from depth to get there and make the play instead of Love getting 3 or 4 yards. And maybe it's a little nitpicky, but that hesitancy can be really crippling if it becomes a habit. Now, clearly it was not a habit for Love last season, and this is, the first game of the year. But, it's a big warning because, again, I'm an indie guy. I always think of Trent Richardson when he was here. Like, the hesitation truly just killed him and destroyed his career. Just something to monitor. But again, yeah, it wasn't a big problem, just something I saw in film I wanted to point out. Let's get to what I think is the bigger problem as far as Love being a 3-down back at the next level. I think one of the things a top running back can overlook, especially early on in their career, is pass pro. And I'll probably do a video here, next week or sometime this season on Kyron Williams, another former Notre Dame running back. But I think one of the big reasons he saw the field so early on with McVay was his pass pro. And there's a few guys in the NFL that I really think were unheralded players coming into the league that were so dominant in pass pro, they started earning touches. And I think another guy like that's Aaron Jones in the Packers and the Vikings. It's such an important trait because if you can't do it, they will not have you on the field. It's just can become a liability. And I just wanted to show here, I don't think that's good enough in pass pro. And maybe you're probably thinking like, that doesn't seem like that big of a deal. Why are you overreacting to it? But there's a couple things I want to see here. One, pass pro is not passive. I want it to be way more aggressive and physical. It needs to be mean, especially on a blitzer. You want to punish that blitzer. Instead, it almost feels like Love is catching this, and that's not good enough to me. Let's also see where his helmet is. I don't like where his helmet is here. Ideally, when I've had to coach running back pass pro, in the past, we want our helmet inside. Why? So that we can drive around the pocket. You can almost use, especially a blitzer that might be bigger than you or has more momentum. If you can like basically anchor or absorb the blitz at first, then you can carry his momentum when you have a hat inside behind the quarterback with that pocket. The problem is when you have your helmet outside and you're trying to use that momentum, it can often steer right into the quarterback. So I don't like where the helmet placement is. I don't like that he's almost trying to catch him. And it doesn't matter in the long run on this specific play, but I think overall, it's a trait I want to see some more nastiness from a guy like this who's clearly so physical as a runner despite being such an explosive playmaker. It's something I want to see more of. Now, granted, maybe he did show it more often during the season. It's something I'm going to monitor during the year, but this might not even be a knock against Love, but just something for you watching to think about is when you're watching an RB as a prospect, especially when it's like in the middling rounds, that might be a bit more unheralded. If they're showing effort as a pass blocker, you can feel pretty confident they'll have a role at the NFL level. And that's all we got today for Love. I think you can see why he's considered the top running back in college football this year. I think it's very, very rare to see a home run hitter with his kind of patience and vision, along with that slipperiness, the leg drive through contact, and then obviously that Penn State highlight that I'll never get enough of is just that pure determination and will, despite all of the circumstances surrounding it. I think this is a special, special kid. I cannot wait for this season. I think he's going to be one of the big reasons Notre Dame makes another deep run this year. And honestly, like I don't know if he wins the Heisman, but I would be fairly surprised if he stays healthy, he's not at least a finalist that's showing up for the presentation. So that's all we got for this week's college film study. We're trying to figure out what Monday's film is. I've got a backup idea we talked about with Kyron Williams, but if something more interesting happens this preseason and we get all 22 before then, I've got some ideas, so we'll keep an eye on this preseason weekend. Thank you so much for watching. If you made it this far, make sure you're subscribed and follow us on socials at Best Available YT. Thank you so much for watching. We'll be back next week.